There was a specific sound my heavy work boots used to make on the wooden stairs leading down to my basement. It was a steady rhythmic thud that I never once thought about for the better part of 40 years. I would just grab the laundry basket or a box of old tools, turn my body, and walk down without looking at my feet. The wood would creak, my knees would bend, and gravity was just something I used to get where I was going faster. I never held the handrail. I never looked down to check the width of the tread. I just moved. That is what a body does when it trusts itself. But a few years after I retired from the logistics center, that sound changed. It became slower. It became hesitant. I started noticing a quiet, heavy pause before my foot would leave the top step. I started reaching out for that oak handrail before I even shifted my weight. I did not want to admit what was happening. I told myself my knees were just a little stiff from the damp morning air, or that the slippers I was wearing were slippery. Men my age are incredibly good at lying to themselves about what they are losing, but the truth was right there in my legs. My thighs felt hollowed out, lighter than they used to be. The solid muscle that had carried me through 3 decades of standing on concrete warehouse floors was quietly slipping away. I finally had to face it during a routine checkup. I was sitting on that crinkly paper they put over the exam table, feeling entirely too old, while my doctor looked over my chart. He is a good man, younger than my son, and he has a habit of looking right at you when he delivers uncomfortable news. He told me, plain and simple, that my legs were getting weak. He said my balance was eroding and my muscle mass was dropping at a rate that concerned him. He used words like sarcopenia and mobility decline, but all I heard was the word weak. It stung. It felt like an insult to a man who had made a living with his back and his legs. But when I got home and really looked at myself in the hallway mirror, I knew he was right. My legs had gotten noticeably thinner. The simple act of getting up from my favorite reading chair was taking a concentrated effort. I had to lean forward, brace my hands on the armrests, and push with my upper body to help my legs finish the job. I was losing the foundation of my independence, and I was letting it happen without a fight. I decided right then that I was not going to spend the last chapters of my life trapped in a recliner, waiting for someone to help me stand up. I started looking for answers. I talked to my daughter Megan, who works as an occupational therapist, and sees exactly what happens when older folks lose their leg strength. I read everything I could get my hands on. I threw out the complicated workout magazines that expect a 70-year-old man to jump around like a teenager. Instead, I found 3 simple, quiet daily habits. 3 things I do every single day now, without fail, that completely rebuilt the strength in my legs and gave me my balance back. I am going to share all 3 of them with you. And the third one, which is just a tiny change in the way you actually put your foot on the ground, is the one that completely erased the fear of falling from my mind. I did not learn these 3 things overnight, and I certainly did not find them easy at first, but they changed the trajectory of my life. You have to understand where I am coming from. I spent 32 years as a warehouse supervisor down near the rail yard. Every single day was a physical test. I was walking miles on hard concrete, climbing up and down metal ladders, loading heavy freight, and constantly moving. I thought that kind of work put a permanent deposit into a bank account of strength. I believed that because I was strong at 40 and strong at 50, I would just naturally stay strong. But what nobody tells you is that muscle does not care what you did 20 years ago. Muscle only cares what you are demanding of it today. When I retired, I stopped demanding anything. I started sitting more. I drove to the store instead of walking. I asked my son Derek to help me move the heavy bags of soil in the yard. I was making my life comfortable, and that comfort was quietly stealing my legs. I realized how dangerous this was when I saw a guy I used to work with, a big strong guy named Mike, go down hard on his front porch. He just lost his footing reaching for the mail. He broke his hip, and within 6 months he looked like he had aged 10 years. His world shrank down to the size of his living room. I remember standing at his front door bringing him some food and thinking that I was staring at my own future if I did not wake up and change direction. The first thing I had to confront was the way I was moving through my own house. I had developed a terrible habit of constantly leaning on things. If I was waiting for the coffee to brew, I would lean my hip against the kitchen counter. If I was putting on my shoes, I would sit down on the edge of the bed. I was never just supporting my own weight. Megan explained to me that when we always use 2 feet and a solid surface to hold ourselves up, the tiny stabilizer muscles in our ankles, knees, and hips simply go to sleep. They forget how to fire. And those are the exact muscles that save you when you trip on a loose rug or step off a curb wrong. She brought over a printed article she had read about how older folks in Japan managed to stay so incredibly mobile well into their 80s. The piece talked about a long-term observation, a study that followed older adults for 10 straight years. It showed that the folks who practiced balancing on just one leg every single day reduced their risk of suffering a hip fracture by an unbelievable 60%. They also dropped their overall incidence of falling by 40%. The numbers were right there on the paper, but what really struck me was that 80% of those people reported a massive increase in their daily confidence. That was exactly what I was missing. Confidence. So, I started a new habit the very next morning. It is the first of the 3 things I do. I call it the one-legged wait. I started standing at the kitchen sink, holding onto the edge of the counter with both hands, and I just lifted my right foot an inch off the floor. I did not raise my knee up to my chest. I just took the weight off it. Immediately, I felt my left ankle wobbling like crazy. The muscles in my calf were burning, trying to figure out how to keep me upright. I realized how weak my stabilizers had become. I held it for 10 seconds, put the foot down, and switched. I did this every morning while waiting for the coffee. After a week, I only needed one hand on the counter. After a month, I could hover my hands just above the sink and hold my balance on one leg for almost a minute. The muscles in my hips and ankles woke up. I shared this with my neighbor Tom. Tom is 71, a retired mechanic who was starting to get real nervous about getting out of his slippery shower. I told him to just try lifting one foot while he was standing at his workbench in the garage, keeping his hand close to the wall. He looked at me like I was crazy, but he did it. 2 weeks later, he flagged me down while I was taking the trash out. He told me that for the first time in a year, he did not feel shaky lifting his leg over the edge of the bathtub. That tiny daily demand on the body forces the muscles to remember their job. But balance is only half the battle if your big muscles, the ones that actually lift your body weight, are wasting away. That brought me to the second thing I had to change. The villain here is something we all love. It is the modern chair. Think about your day. You sit on the edge of the bed, you sit on the toilet, you sit in the car seat, you sit at the dining table, you sit in the recliner. Almost every surface we use is built to exactly the same height, right around the back of our knees. That means for years I never dropped my hips below my knee line. I never asked my thighs and my glutes to push my body weight up from a low position. Because I stopped going down low, my body forgot how to do it. I read another fascinating piece of information while I was digging into that Japanese longevity research. In their culture, resting in a deep squat on the floor is completely normal. They do not rely on high sofas the way we do. And because they constantly get down to the floor and back up, they maintain incredible strength in their lower body. There was a study out of a university over there that looked at people in their 70s who kept up this habit of resting low to the ground. The researchers found that these seniors had the functional leg strength of people in their 50s. I read that and looked down at my own legs, knowing I could not even get close to the floor without grabbing onto a heavy piece of furniture. I knew I could not just drop into a deep squat. My knees would have never forgiven me. But I needed to simulate that action. I needed to build my own version of that habit. I started using the heavy oak table in our dining room. I would stand facing it, plant my feet a little wider than my shoulders, hold onto the edge of the table, and slowly lower my hips backward, like I was trying to sit in a chair that was completely invisible. I would go down just far enough until I felt a deep, serious burning in my thighs. I made sure my heels stayed flat on the floor and my back stayed relatively straight. The first time I tried it, I could only hold it for about 10 seconds before my legs started shaking so badly I had to pull myself back up. But I kept doing it 3 times a day. Before breakfast, before lunch, before dinner. The tension on those large thigh muscles is exactly what tells the body to hold on to muscle mass. My wife Linda watched me doing this for about a week. Linda is a practical woman. She used to be a school administrator, and she is the one who finally convinced me to take my physical decline seriously. She had been dealing with a lot of clicking and discomfort in her own knees whenever we walked up the steps to our church. She decided to join me. She started holding onto the solid edge of the kitchen counter while her morning oatmeal was cooking. She would lower her hips, hold the tension in her legs for 20 seconds, and then stand back up. We never pushed past pain. We only pushed into the muscle burn. After about 4 weeks of this daily habit, Linda stopped complaining about her knees on Sunday mornings. The muscles around her joints had gotten stronger, taking the pressure off the bone. For me, the change was even more obvious. Getting out of my deep reading chair stopped being an upper body exercise. I could just lean forward, plant my feet, and push the floor away. My legs were doing their job again. Now, I promised you 3 habits. I have told you about challenging the stabilizer muscles by standing on one leg. I have told you about waking up the big lifting muscles by lowering your hips and holding the tension. But this 3rd habit is the one that caught me completely by surprise. It is the one that took the fear out of walking on wet leaves, uneven sidewalks, and gravel driveways. The problem was the way I had started walking. Without realizing it, I had developed an old man shuffle. I was keeping my feet close to the ground, taking short, heavy steps and mostly landing flat-footed. I was walking with a constant, quiet fear of falling, and ironically, that heavy, dragging step is exactly what causes you to catch your toe and go down. I was talking to Megan about my calves. I noticed they looked like deflated balloons. She told me something that completely shifted my perspective. She explained that the calf muscle is actually considered the second heart of the human body. Every time you contract your calf, it pumps blood back up your legs against gravity, back toward your chest. If you shuffle, you never fully engage the calf, which means poor circulation, heavy feeling legs, and a terrible lack of balance. I started looking into how to fix this, and I stumbled across an old walking practice, again from Eastern traditions. They call it sampa, a kind of slow, meditative walking. The entire focus is on the mechanics of the foot hitting the ground. You do not just let your foot fall, you place it. You focus entirely on the heel striking first, then rolling smoothly through the middle of the foot, and finally pushing off strongly with the toes. I read about a group of adults over 65 who practiced this conscious, slow-stepping method. After just 3 months, they saw a 50% improvement in blood circulation in their lower legs and a 40% reduction in their risk of falling. Their dynamic balance, which is your ability to stay upright while you are moving, shot through the roof. I took this concept out to my driveway. The driveway is long, slightly graded, and covered in packed gravel. It used to make me nervous. I started walking down it at a quarter of my normal speed. I forced myself to feel my heel hit the rocks. Then I rolled the weight deliberately across the arch of my shoe. Then I squeezed my calf and pushed off with my toes. Heel, roll, push, heel, roll, push. It felt completely unnatural at first. It required so much mental focus that I could not even listen to the radio while I did it. But I realized exactly why my legs had been feeling so dead. I had not truly pushed off my toes in years. I had just been letting gravity pull me forward. I started practicing this conscious walk for just 5 minutes every morning while going out to get the newspaper. I made sure every single step was a full contraction of the calf muscle. My son Derek came over one Sunday afternoon to help me clean out the gutters. Derek owns an HVAC company, works hard, and is always telling me I need to be careful not to overdo things. He watched me walk across the uneven, sloping grass in the backyard to grab the heavy garden hose. I was not thinking about the walking practice at that moment. It had just become the way I move. He stopped what he was doing and looked at me. He said, "Dad, you look solid today. You are not walking like you are walking on ice anymore." He did not know about the heel-to-toe rolling. He did not know about the calves acting like a second heart. He just saw a man who trusted the ground underneath him. That is the redemption in all of this. There is no magic pill that builds muscle after 60. There is no comfortable recliner that will protect your independence. The only thing that saves you is deciding to put your body to work in small, deliberate ways every single day. I still remember the exact morning I realized the fear had faded. I woke up, got out of bed, and walked all the way down the hall to the kitchen to start the coffee. It was not until I was pouring the water that I realized I had not thought about my legs once. I did not scan the floor for obstacles. I did not touch the wall for balance. There was just a quiet silence in my mind where the worry used to be. My legs were just my legs again. Later that same week, my youngest grandson was over. He wanted to build a wooden train track on the living room rug. A year ago, I would have told him to build it on the coffee table so I could sit on the couch and watch. That day, I just lowered my hips, felt my thighs engage, and dropped right down onto the carpet with him. We spent an hour down there, and when it was time for lunch, I planted my feet, pushed the floor away, and stood up without grabbing the sofa cushions. The freedom in that simple movement is worth more to me than almost anything else in my life. You do not need to buy an expensive gym membership to start taking your legs back. You do not need heavy iron weights or complicated machines. You just need to start paying attention to the machinery you already own. You need to remind your body that you still expect it to perform. If your legs are feeling weak, if the stairs are looking steeper, do not wait until you have a close call to take action. Start tomorrow morning. When you are standing at the bathroom sink, brushing your teeth, just see if you can take the weight off one foot. Just hover it an inch off the ground and feel those ankle muscles wake up. Hold on to the counter, be safe, but demand something from your body. Because muscle does not disappear overnight. It packs its bags and leaves when you stop giving it a reason to stay. I'm going to be right here, working on my own foundation, holding the line. I hope you will decide to do the same.